Hello, and welcome to the Catching the Octopus podcast. Here, we will explore how connecting inward gives us an advantage outward. We openly talk about the obstacles and challenges and difficulties that life throws our way and how they become moments of gratitude and things that can benefit us when we look back on our lives. I'm your host, Niomi Hurley, and it is my mission to bring you top quality guests that will share with you openly their obstacles and also the techniques they use to go inward that strengthens the way that they serve themselves and others at the highest level. Thank you for joining. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to today's episode of Catching the Octopus podcast. Today, I wanted to recap on my interview with Adam Hill. And Adam and I, as I said in that thing, we met at an event, which was an online event. And, you know, there was a couple of other people in our group that I connected with as well. But Adam and I have then continued on assisting each other in our work. You know, he's come and spoken at a couple of my one-day events, which has just been awesome and fan favorite as well, I must say. His messaging is just really awesome. And I also have been on his podcast, the Flow Over Fear podcast, so go and have a listen to that. And we often just support each other on social media or in catch-ups and wherever we need to. So one of the key things that Adam talked about was the power of that community. You know, finding people that you can surround yourself with to get you to where you need to be. Now, that might be contemporaries, so people on the same level as you that are going to propel you forward, that are going to encourage and support and grow you. Or that can be people that have already done what you want to do. You know, people that have already achieved what you're looking to achieve. And connecting with them can give you their insights and save you from tripping over a million times because you know where the obstacles are. And connection for me is really important. I'm part of some networking groups, the local chamber, some Facebook online groups, and also a mastermind as well that has been developed with some like-minded individuals. And we catch up once a fortnight and just go through what are our wins for the fortnight, what are our obstacles for the fortnight or challenges, and we help each other through. And it's not only just helping each other through those obstacles, it's actually and celebrating the wins, which is really important, but it's also being there as a voice for each other. It's when you're in a room and you can hear an opportunity that connects with someone in your connections, it's sharing that. You know, I've spoken with people before that have been in a place of fear and letting fear rule their mind. And I'll suggest for them to reach out to Adam because I know he's brilliant at that. That's his expertise. I've been approached by someone to do voicing for inductions, and I have a really good friend who's a voice actor and also an actress. And I've said, look, I can do that for you, but here's someone that is better for that and fits in well. And so when we find our community, it's about being in that community, but it's also about giving back to that community. And that's what makes it really important and helpful for us. So, you know, Adam spoke about how he utilized that in his journey to becoming a world-class triathlete, right? And going to Kona, and how he sought out someone who'd done that before and who gave him a framework. And within that framework that he was speaking about, he was saying, you know, prior to that, his dream for becoming fit and becoming an Ironman and doing a triathlete was all about going all in. Now, I'm a fan of going all in, but there's a time and a place for that, right? And so he found, because he was just going all in all the time at 110%, trying to reach where he needed to reach, that actually then made him burn out. You know, he ended up with injuries, he had a shoulder blowout for a little while, and he just burnt out and he lost his motivation from time to time because of burning out. And that takes me back to my corporate role and my corporate life, in my desire and willingness and want to serve the companies that I worked for, how much I gave them. And what I gave to them was at the expense of my family and my personal life, and not realizing at the time because I'm in the middle of it, but that caused a lot of burnout for me. And I know after I started on this venture and in this space, there was one day I woke up and I felt this terrible feeling in my chest. And I was just like, oh, I think this is anxiety. And then I realized that that was what I felt every day before I went to work. And I was just like, wow. And when I was in it, I didn't realize it. It wasn't until after, when I hadn't experienced it for a while, that it came through. And so that was because I was always driven to be at 110%, and my body just wasn't able to cope. So what Adam was saying was being at 80%, a consistent 80%, is what actually gets you progress, because you're always moving forward. You're not getting to them highs that then burn you out and take you to those lows, right? So his coach then said to him, staying at 80% is what you want to do. And that's what he did. And, he talked about as well that the goals that we set up for 12 months for ourselves are usually above what we're going to achieve, right? Usually way out there at extreme. But the goals that we set ourselves for 10 years don't always tend to be as realistic. We tend to underestimate our capabilities in 10 years. And that's what he did when he was looking at doing Ironman. So he had set his goal for Kona for a 10-year goal, and within 4 years, he reached it. And he reached it from sitting at that 80%. Now, when he reached that, that means that he hit the top 1% of athletes in the world. And that is a really great achievement. And I think it was really, for me, it connected knowing that he did that by not going 110%. Now, when I say that, there are times and places, right? There are times where I'm sure when he was training, he would have had to go and dig a little bit deeper. Or when he was in his races, he was having to dig a little bit deeper. So it doesn't mean sitting back and plateauing and just thinking it's all going to come to you, right? But it's about having the right strategy. And Adam was able to get that strategy from speaking with the right people, which I think was just amazing. Now, one of the key things he talks about is a flow over fear, is rising above fear, and how in his life, fear dictated to him what he could and couldn't do, right? Fear told him all of these lies, and his mind grasped them and held on to them. And so when he had an aspiration or a dream of something he wanted to achieve, fear came up as well. And fear said, oh, I don't think so, mate. That's not you. You're not capable. You're not able to do that. And fed these lies that he actually accepted at the time. Now, it wasn't until he went through his healing journey that he was able to have that awareness around that. And I think that is the key thing of being aware of what is holding us back. And we don't have to fight it all the time. It's not about fighting the things that are holding us back. It's about having awareness of them, acknowledging them, and then rising above them, meeting them and confronting them. And actually seeing, are these lies or are they truths? And are they truths that my disbeliever believes, or are they the real truths, the universal truths? And that is a way that you can push through. And he talks about that rising above fear, using fear as a superpower and recognizing the fear within. And when we recognize it, we can also disable some of its power, because we see it for what it is, right? And I think that's what happens in our lives a lot of the times, is things comes at us and we don't always have that awareness or that consciousness to actually recognize it for what it is. And we can give those negative elements of us, or those unhelpful elements of us rather, more power than what they deserve. So he talks about the 3 C's, his framework, right, for rising above fear and for going for what you want to go for, right? And having that achiever mindset. He speaks about being convicted, being courageous, and being clear. And that really resonated with me, because I hadn't thought of it before and I hadn't put a framework around it. But where I'm coming from in this venture and how I've progressed, they're the 3 key things that have always been there. And when they haven't been there, is when I've been in those spaces of self-doubt, or when imposter syndromes come in, when I thought, is this all too much? Should I get a day job? What am I doing? Am I kidding myself? All of those sorts of thoughts come through when fear rises up, but it's by having that strong conviction, by being convicted, by, having faith, being bold and having that boldness, right? And the commitment to the end game of where you want to be, what you want to see in your life, what you want to see in you. And then also that courageousness, the courage to step outside the comfort zone, not to get to the edge of the comfort zone and say, okay, this is the boundary, need to go back now, but having the courage to take the next step and keep going forward and coming out of that space of comfort. Because we tend to be, as humans, the brain likes what's familiar. And so we want to stay in comfort. We want to stay in that familiar space because the brain goes, oh, you're safe. And stepping outside of our comfort zone and stepping outside of where we feel safe on a familiarity level is where we experience the most growth.
If you're enjoying this podcast and you want Niomi or any of her guests featured on your podcast or as a keynote speaker at your next event, you'll find their contact details included in the show notes. If you'd like to learn more about how you can work with Niomi individually or as part of your strategy to improve leadership in your business, then review the courses, offers and services at getupandgoconsulting.com.au.
That's where the opportunities are. And so we need to embrace and walk towards those and be courageous. And then be clear. What does success look like for you? What is your why? Why do you want to do this? What is your motivation? Be clear on what your end game is. Be clear on what your objectives are. Be clear on how you're going to celebrate that. Be clear on what those stepping stones are along the way that help know that you're on track. Be clear about when you are and aren't on track so that you can readjust and realign and come back to where you need to go. Or be clear on, if you're clear on your why, sometimes veering off track is exactly where you need to be. And that clarity can help you see that and move through that. So he was really saying as well, being clear on the principles, and serving the principles of himself. So he talked about sometimes, as achievers, we're usually driven to achieve because we like to be seen to be doing great things. And there's an underlying element there of people pleasing. Okay, let's be honest. Imposter syndrome is about not being enough. Perfectionism is about not being enough. So all of those things, are about being enough. And we feel enough when we know that other people, or it helps us rather feel enough when other people are validating us. And so it is easy to become a people pleaser and try and go out there and do things that we think other people want to see, or do things that we feel like other people need, rather than just knowing and going out there from a space of what we feel is the right thing. And so he mixed it up a little bit. And he said that he now, instead of worrying about pleasing people, he's moved into a space now where he's pleasing principles. He's looking at his core principles and what they mean to him. And that's what he sets out to please. And look, sometimes that means you've got to make difficult decisions that other people may not be happy about at the time. And sometimes it means that we have to take different stances. Sometimes it means stepping outside of our comfort zone, right? And where we feel familiar. And sometimes it means just going in and having faith that what we're doing is the right thing. And serving other people as leaders, we often do it from a place of what serves us. But actually serving the principles, we're actually doing the thing that serves the greater good. And that's where true leveled up leadership comes from. It comes from serving the greater good, not our fears and the things that are holding us back and our wanting to please people and our perfectionism and our imposter syndrome. It's not about that. It's not about worrying if we're going to upset other people or they're not going to like us because of what we're doing. It's about actually serving the greater good. And I mentioned in the podcast, Jeff Stewart, who's been a guest on here. I saw on one of his LinkedIn posts that he had, if you want to please everyone, don't be a leader, sell ice cream. And I loved it. It really related to me and it really resonated with me, because we're not going to please all the people all the time, but that doesn't mean that what we're doing isn't for their benefit, right? And sometimes we look at pleasing them as their benefit, but that's not always the case. And even in ourselves, if we look back, the obstacles we've been through have often been gifts that we're able to open up later, right? They've been a gift that we've been given that we then get to open up and enjoy and celebrate later on. And that could be exactly what we're giving to other people when we're leading from the greater good, rather than leading from pleasing ourselves or pleasing others. And he also spoke about owning the morning. If you own the morning, you will own the day. And I loved that phrase that he said and that quote. And I totally agree. How we set up, there's a thing in psychology, priming and biases and all those sorts of things. We can prime ourselves from different things we see. Advertisers do it all the time. Manipulating people do it all the time. That's how they can manipulate us, right? But we often don't think of how we can prime ourselves. And so he has his morning method that he goes through that actually sets him up to be able to face the day in the best possible way. He has an activity that he does that challenges his mind, shows his mind that he's the boss. The mind isn't the boss. He also has some space where he's grateful, where he's setting up that energetic space for great things to come his way. He's got some inner reflection time. He's got some breathing. So he's looking after his body, his mind, and his emotional being. And his spirit as well. He has some spiritual connection there too. So what a beautiful morning method. You can learn more in the interview if you're interested. Jump back and have a listen. But what a beautiful way to start the day by having that morning method. And for myself, most people will know is I like to meditate in the morning. And it's not just, I don't just YouTube a meditation, which I did in the past, but I have a concise method on how I do that, on how I actually sit there in space, how I connect with myself, how I send blessing to those that need it in the world or those that are around me that I feel are suffering, and even those that are in my close networks and my family. And then how I connect with our source, God, universe, greater being, whatever you believe it to be. And those three things, by doing those three things every morning, I'm primed for the day ahead. It sets me up to be able to cope with the adversities that come my way, to show myself that I'm able to control my emotions and my thoughts and my behaviors, that I'm able to respond rather than just react. And with morning methods, with meditation, with the morning method that Adam does, with whatever anyone does to interconnect, doing it ad hoc isn't the key, right? Doing it, I'm in a bad place, I'm going to go meditate because I need to reduce my stress. Kind of doesn't work like that, right? It's like being unhealthy and then taking one vitamin and thinking it's going to change. You need to take those vitamins consistently. And that's what setting up success in leadership is as well. We need to be consistent. It's when we're consistent, we have that consistent way that we show up. We have the consistent messaging that we give. We're serving consistently. We're consistently interacting with all of the people. There's no favorites. There's no anything else, but consistency is key. And consistency is key in leadership, in how we show up and operate. And also consistency is key for how we show up for ourselves. And when we can set that tone, then we're going to go through life with more clarity. We're going to have more conviction, we're going to be more courageous, and we're going to be more clear with what we do. Now, just to final and sign off on this, before I do, rather, I am a big fan of Adam, if you couldn't tell, and he's got some amazing messaging. And I just want to, I suppose, showcase my gratitude and talk a little bit about more how we can attract these people in. Me signing up for that program, being in that room, connecting with Adam and also his wife Marie is wonderful as well, and his wonderful family. But having those connections is no accident, right? But it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't have taken the steps to get into the room. So sometimes we just need to follow where we're being driven, follow where we feel we need to go, and not always second guess and question it. And that will take us into a space. And, Adam spoke as well about luck and how lucky they are and how lucky they are. And sometimes not recognizing that we create our own luck. I've said it before to people, I'm so lucky, I'm so blessed. And I've been told, no, you've created this luck. And if I go back to Adam's 3 C's, I've done it through having that conviction, through being courageous, and through being clear. I've had that luck by sitting in a space where I'm serving others, sometimes above serving myself. I'm receiving that luck because I am spending the time, though, to fill up my cup by strengthening my inner connection so that I can follow my intuitive path, so I know what are the right decisions to make. And I've had that luck by meeting different people and being in the right rooms and having the right vibrational energies that connect with those people, by sharing the messages that I feel intuitively needing to share that have helped someone else. And I get that luck from realizing that, and this is a little bit tricky for me to say because I've been driven from ego for so long, but I get that luck now from stepping out of that place of being driven by ego and being driven by who I truly am and what I truly feel is the right thing to do. Not just for me, not just for those around me, but for everything, for that greater good. And when we can make those decisions, create those connections, be in the right spaces, be in the right mindset, prime ourselves in the right way, the opportunities will come and present themselves. I mean, even Adam said, there's probably opportunities that were there that weren't recognized, because he wasn't in the right space to recognize them. And he also spoke about the cynic and how the cynic is always never looking for them and never finds them. Right? And so that was my final little word. My final thing I wanted to share is today, when you go and face your day, is to think about how you can respond rather than react. And think about, are you showing up with conviction, with courage? And are you clear on exactly how and who you can be and how and who you need to be and how you need to do that? Thank you very much for listening to this episode. It's been great serving you, and I look forward to serving you again in our next episode. Thanks for joining in and listening to this episode of Catching the Octopus podcast. It's been great having you here. And if you'd like to go and like and subscribe and maybe even leave a 5-star rating if you think it's worth it, I'd really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you in our next episode.